Everyone has a different idea what it means to be a good role player. For some, a good role player is someone who can immerse themselves in a story and embrace their character. For others, a good role player is someone who can solve all the puzzles and defeat all the encounters. For me, a good role player isn't someone who's defined by their skills in acting or problem solving, that's just a bonus. Instead, a good role player is someone who remembers that role-playing is a social experience. In this video, I'm going to be discussing 5 things that I think are important for all role players to remember. A good role player is defined by the rest of the group more than by their own accomplishments as a player. It's someone who is fun to play with and that makes the other players feel valuable and appreciated. Everyone can become a good role player, and feel free to offer your own suggestions in the comments below. A good role player is someone who's attentive and interested. They should want to be there. You can easily tell when someone is bored because that's when they lose focus of the game and they start fiddling with their phone. There can be situations when the player is genuinely bored, and much of that could be the GM's fault because they could be the one not attentive to the other player's needs. However, being attentive means more than simply showing interest in the scenes. It's also about being aware of the other participants in the room. An attentive player is aware of the fact that the game is about more than themselves. By showing interest in what other players are doing and what is happening outside of your own self goes a long way to make the other players enjoy your company at the table. I want to address 3 aspects of attentiveness that's good to keep in mind when you want to improve your role-playing. These can also be general social tips for situations other than role-playing. First, you can become more attentive of the GM and their narrative by taking notes throughout the game. By reminding yourself that there could come up information important to the narrative, you can train yourself to be more perceptive of that information and to take notes of things as they come up. Tell yourself before the game that I'm going to take notes this session, and check in on yourself with regular intervals throughout the game to see if you live up to that statement. If you know that you're easily bored or distracted, you can train yourself to be more attentive of the story by taking notes of things that other players are doing as well, even if it's unrelated to your own character. Remember that it's important that you have fun as well though, so don't force yourself to take a bunch of notes if you feel that it's ruining your experience rather than enriching it. It is a good way to practice awareness though if you feel that your thoughts often drift away and you forget things from the game. Second, you can become more attentive of the social cues around the table. By reminding yourself that you're one individual in a group of several, take note of the other players' affects, their body languages, the things they say and the things they do, have eye contact. If you're attentive of your fellow players' experience at the table, you'll be more aware of when they are having fun or when they are bored. You don't have to be some social guru in order to train yourself to be more socially aware. You only need to remind yourself in the moment to look outwards instead of getting lost in your own thoughts. If you're aware of how other players are feeling, you can tailor your roleplay in a way that gives them a good experience. For example, if you notice another player being distracted or bored, you can approach them in game to share a scene with them. If you notice a player being uncomfortable by something that's happening in the game, you can give them support both in-game and out of game in order to better their experience. If you know that you're bad at reading social cues in general, and you know that you often miss or misinterpret other people's affects, then it can be helpful to be honest about that and ask outright how someone is feeling and if there's something you can do to support them. Third, you can become more attentive to your own actions, thoughts and feelings. If you know that you're easily impulsive, that you're too shy to take risks, or that you tend to interrupt other players in order to blurt out unrelated anecdotes, or that you get easily distracted, angry, upset, or anything else that could be seen as problematic, then remind yourself to be on the lookout for those quirks. By telling yourself before the game to not be as impulsive as you usually are, you can become more attentive of the signs that your impulsiveness will surface. If you can become aware of the signs that your personality traits or quirks can be disruptive for the game, then rationalizing it in the moment can help to either channel those traits in a different way or to suppress them if they be problematic outright. If you know and accept that you have a quirk that could be disruptive, but you don't trust your own ability to rationalize or suppress it, then invite your fellow players to help you out. Hey, I know I can be a bit loud at times, just tell me if I am, okay? And don't be upset if they actually tell you to quiet down. A good roleplayer is also someone who takes the initiative to interact with the scene and the other characters. Initiative in this context doesn't mean that you have to be socially outgoing and constantly assertive. It's perfectly fine to be withdrawn or socially anxious and still be able to take initiatives that help shape the narrative. In this context, taking initiatives means that you're aware of your character's presence in the scene and what the circumstances are for that scene. This keys off of your attentiveness. If you've been attentive of the narrative, taking note of certain details and are aware of your own character's abilities, taking initiatives means that you're able to come up with approaches that can further the narrative of the scene without having to be prompted or guided towards those conclusions. This initiative could be something more direct, such as piecing the clues together and suggest a solution that could overcome an obstacle. It could be something more dramatic, such as approaching another character for an interaction. It could be something reflective, such as recognizing that you don't have all the information and taking the initiative to change things in your favor, such as beginning an investigation. It could also be something more productive, such as responding to the GM's cues, as well as providing your own additions to the scene and the situation. A GM wants the players to interact with the setting because doing so means that they acknowledge it and are willing to place themselves within this world of the GM's making. To see players roleplay and problem solve freely and without prompting is one of the most rewarding things of being a GM. If you're the kind of player who often wait for others to take initiative and drive the narrative forward, challenging yourself to test your own ideas without prompting signals your engagement to the GM. This can be easier said than done, though. It's possible that you're an introverted player who don't feel comfortable or safe taking initiatives without prompting. In that case, there are different ways of taking initiatives that may help you improve as a roleplayer without triggering your social anxiety as a result. If the GM is unsure if you're engaged because you don't show it as openly as the other players, try telling them that you enjoy the game but find it hard to compete with other players, and that more prompting from the GM as well as from the other players could be helpful. If you have ideas on things you want to do in game but aren't comfortable to just decide to do them because you think that other players may dislike your initiative, then step out from the game for a moment and tell the other players out of character what your idea is. In this case, you took the initiative to present the solution without having to feel like you put the scene or the characters at risk through your decision. Even if role-playing can be very immersive, it's not real life, and you have the right to pause the game to reflect. There could be moments when the GM wants to pressure you for time to keep the game going or to add suspense to a scene, and that's okay too, but that doesn't take precedence over your own ability to feel comfortable and safe at the table. We have so far mentioned attentiveness and taking initiatives as two factors that could make you improve as a roleplayer. Something that keys off both of those factors is your ability to encourage other players by ceding the spotlight to them. While it's important to be able to take your own initiatives to drive the narrative forward, it's also important to help improve your fellow players' experience at the table. If you're the only one taking initiatives, or if you're too assertive taking your initiatives, then other players could feel ignored or put down. Another way of taking initiatives is to actively encourage other players in the game by helping them take advantage of their strengths and letting them become the center of attention. A self-centered player wants to be the one with the coolest character that does all the cool things, but while this self-centered player may think that they're a good role player because of all the cool stuff that's happening around their character, they often forget that role-playing is a social experience. A good role player recognizes other people and their strengths, as well as recognizes how other people and their strengths can be used to elevate a scene. If you're the kind of player who don't want to see the spotlight at all, then you're better off playing the game solo or not at all, because other players don't want to play with you anyway. There are role players who want a personal experience more than a social experience, and they are free to approach the game that way. They aren't wrong for wanting that, because all role players strive for immersive personal experiences as well. However, if their need for a good personal experience is greater than the recognition of other people's right to a good personal experience, then perhaps they shouldn't be playing with a group. Being able to encourage others should also mean that you're ready and willing to set aside your most favored thing for the benefit of another player, and instead having to settle with a less favored thing as a result. This doesn't mean that you have to deliberately make the game worse for yourself. You should want to encourage the other players, because them having a good experience means that you're having a good experience. Part of seeing the spotlight is about being a good person, and by promoting your friends in addition to promoting yourself. You shouldn't see the spotlight every time, because you have the right to it as well, but if your friends are good role players too, then they'll be seeing it for you at times as well. So when should you see the spotlight, and how do you know when it's appropriate to not see the spotlight? If you're attentive of the other players and the roleplay, you'll be aware of their strengths and weaknesses. If you're playing a fighter and you specialize in strength and constitution, and another player is playing a bard and specializes in charisma, then it's often appropriate to let the bard handle delicate social situations, because that's their specialty. That doesn't mean that you cannot have social experiences as a fighter. All it means is that you recognize in the moment that this is a good moment for our bard to shine, and encourage them to do so. In return, you have the right to expect that when it's time for fisticuffs, your bard will sing your praises and tell your foes that watch out for Gregory here, because he'll take you out, and not for dinner. When you interact with another individual, such as encouraging another player to take certain actions in the game, you also need to respect that there could be moments when a person doesn't want to have the spotlight shown on them, or they may feel like your so-called encouragement is railroading them towards certain actions. Consent is important in all interactions, and role-playing games are no different. The bard could be having a bad day and not want to step up to handle that delicate social situation, because their player doesn't feel comfortable doing that in that moment. That's their right, and you need to respect that. All participants in a role-playing game have agency of their own characters. That means that just like someone else cannot force you to do something you're not comfortable with, you cannot force someone else to do something they are not comfortable with. The key word here is comfortable. Role-playing games can and often include things such as social influence, mind control, magic, and other things that could compel a character into taking certain actions. But when your character is influenced into certain actions and you're happy to abide to those actions, you are consenting to that as a player. You don't have to consent to that. You could take a step back and say that the scene is making you uncomfortable. A game is supposed to be fun, and playing around with magic and mind control can be fun as long as you accept it as fun, but you're still having agency in that moment. It's when those scenarios start trickling through the membrane that separates fictional you from real you, and real you starts feeling unwelcome thoughts and feelings, that's when it's no longer a game, that's when it becomes real. And you, just like your fellow players, have the right to protest that. Playing a role-playing game is a very interesting activity, because something happens in your brain when you do. Your character and your real self are like ocean and land, and there's a shore in between where ocean and land meet. When immersing yourself in the game, you're walking along that shore, and there are moments when the ocean becomes as real as the land is. Depending on what's happening in the game, the ocean could come rushing over you like a wave, and you could start feeling real emotions associated with the fictional events. When good things happen to your character, you feel genuinely happy. When bad things happen to your character, you can feel genuinely sad or angry or even traumatized. Every player has their own personal boundaries, and they have the right to control what is allowed near those boundaries. A good role player recognizes this phenomenon as real and respects their fellow players accordingly. If you're the kind of person who claims that consent isn't important because it's just a game, then I question if you've actually played role-playing games, because you seem to be missing the point. Whenever I make a video where I mention things like this, there's always at least one person who dislikes the video because they bought into some kind of idea that recognizing the facts about role-playing psychology is somehow woke. But the fact of the matter is that those people are either fact resistant or they lack empathy, and I'm pretty sure that they would be quick to anger if their own agency or consent comes into question. They are better off playing solo or not at all, because not getting past that silly idea that it's just a game completely defeats the purpose of role-playing games and the real experiences you create when you play these games. The final topic that we're going to discuss is metagaming. This is part of the absolute basics of role-playing, but people often underestimate how difficult it can be to avoid metagaming, and even the best role-players metagame to some degree. Metagaming refers to when a player lets out of character information affecting character decisions. This could manifest in a number of different ways, and to different degrees. I also find that players who mostly GM and only rarely get to play often metagame more because they have deep setting knowledge. Someone who is very familiar with the game's setting will have a hard time not letting themselves be influenced by their knowledge of the setting. Even if your character is completely unaware that a particular creature is dangerous, your knowledge of that creature as a player will undoubtedly influence how you respond as a character. You want to avoid harm, so you're being cautious, even though you have no real reason to be based on what your character should know. This kind of metagaming can be minimized through conscious effort, but it's minimal enough to be mostly inconsequential, and you could probably justify your character's caution without blaming it on player knowledge if you really wanted to. Metagaming is really only a problem when it's disruptive in a negative way. For example, if you have knowledge of an in-game conversation between two other player characters and that your character should know nothing about, it can be disruptive if you start making in-game decisions based on that knowledge, even though you shouldn't have it. The other players will not enjoy that, the GM will likely not enjoy that, and you acting on that information could take away roleplay opportunities for those other players. Some level of metagaming can add levity to a scene as well, depending on how you use it. If you apply your knowledge in a way that you're certain will elevate the enjoyment of the scene, even at your own expense, then it's likely that it will be well received. Metagaming is problematic when you use it to reward yourself and to make you out to be on top, even if it's undeserved or irrational. However, if you know that another player is planning to play a prank on your character and you both consent to it and think it would make for a funny scene, you could apply your metagaming in a way that encourages that other player to succeed at your own expense. You know that Liam has spiced your drink with a love potion, for example, and instead of metagaming in a way that lets you avoid drinking the potion, you make a scene out of it and make everyone notice how you're drinking the potion. You know that it's meant to mess with you, but you don't mind because you think it would lead to an interesting scene. So the answer to the question about metagaming is that you could metagame, but you should do so wisely. You shouldn't metagame in a way that disrupts the game for the players or the GM. When you decide to metagame, it should be to elevate the game, to encourage other players, and it should be a level of metagaming that others are okay with. Others will respond very differently to your metagaming if you're doing it at your own expense and not to reward yourself or somehow make you out to be excellent. The fundamental rule is still to avoid metagaming, but a good role player can metagame in a positive way. I'm going to end the video here. I hope you've gained something from the ideas I'm posing here, and I'm very interested in knowing about your own opinions on what constitutes good role-playing and how to improve as a role-player. Make sure to comment below on what you agree with, what you disagree with, and what your own opinions are. Make sure to like, share, and subscribe, and if you're interested in more of my content, make sure to visit my Patreon. I'm going to end this video with a clip from Campaign 1, Episode 109 of Critical Role, where Liam pranks Sam into drinking a love potion. Until next time.
Anyway, he wanted me to pull a prank on you, and, you know, we have a lot of history with that, and I held on to it for a long time, looking for a time that felt right, and it never happened, and sometimes I felt like I didn't want to do that anymore, but I don't want to let his gift go to waste. And truth be told, I did a bit of research on it. It is a love potion, Grog. I don't know if we have time for this.
Yep.
But maybe for old time's sake, because I love you and I know you love me, and we share this in common. I thought maybe we could prank Scanlan together.
Meanwhile, inside, I'm just so happy to be back in the group. I mean, it's been a pretty crazy few days, but I feel like you've all accepted me, and I'm so happy to be back. And I can't thank you enough. It really, from the bottom of my heart, thank you. Thank you for fully accepting me back.
We're really sorry for everything, Scanlan. You know we love you.
I love you too.
Yeah.
Not in a weird way.
No. I'm married.
Just
Ooh,
friends.
that would be awkward.
Hey, what are you guys talking about?
Oh, just how much we love life.
Without both of you.
I start examining my fingernails and moving closer to Scanlan.
You know, I do feel like our teamwork has been getting better, though.
Yeah.
Like, we've been doing so good at synergizing, you know?
I mean,
Figuring out which works
that
best.
fight could have gone terribly, and we pulled through as a team.
Oh, 100%.
You know what,
Yeah.
though? I know in the past, Vax, I've had my differences with you. Well, you know, I didn't like you charging after that dragon that one time, and we had some issues, but tonight I just feel like we're close, and you would never do anything to betray me. And
Oh, that
And with
wine
all-
looks really good.
yeah, let's take a sip. But first, you know, I was thinking about how close we've become, Vax, and I even wrote you a little inspirational song.
Oh, shit.
Vax, little dead.
Go ahead and make a sleight of hand check.
Oh, shit!
What is it?
29.
Scanlan.
From that?
Yeah!
That was
Scanlan.
inspiration to me? How
He's
much?
inspiring you because he thinks you're gonna
Because I
fucking
love
fail.
you, buddy.
39.
So Scanlan, I want you to go and make a perception check.
That's a 12.
I instantly dive and grab Keyleth's eyes and cover them and turn her away.
Stop, get off of me!
Sorry.
Why your hands are a little clammy? Oh, God! Why are you sweating? Why are you nervous? You're nervous.
A very strange display from Baxeldan. However, your drink is available for you at the table.
Yeah, sure.
That was a great song,
That's
Stan.
good stuff.
Good
Man, I just feel invigorated.
All right, so as you finish the drink, you blink your eyes.
Grog, come here.
I'm gonna ask
Scanlan
you,
seems a little off.
Scanlan, who do you see first?